School of Management Studies IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course Mmpc 011 titled Social Processes and Behavioral Issues for MBA Program. Presenting Block 2 titled Intrapersonal Processes. Unit 5 Learning and Behavioral Modification Part 1.
Objectives. After going through this unit, you should be able to 1. Understand the nature of learning process. 2. Explain various theories on learning. 3. Discuss how reinforcement helps in motivating a person to learn. 4. Importance of learning in organizations. 5. Understand the concept of behavior modification. 6. Importance of behavior modification in organizations. Introduction. Every action and behavior of an individual has some element of learning involved. Behavior is something which can be publicly viewed, but there is also an unobservable inner cognitive behavior which will influence the individual. Thus, the outcome can take the form of desirable or undesirable behavior. Of course, only desirable work behavior can contribute towards achieving organizational goals. That is why it is necessary on the part of the individual employee to learn periodically new knowledge and skills. Further, learning is a powerful incentive for many employees to stick to certain organizations. Learning has a significant impact on individual behavior as it influences abilities, role perceptions, and motivation. Along with its role in individual behavior, learning is essential for knowledge management that enhances an organization's capacity to acquire, share, and utilize its resources in ways that improve its survival and success. In this unit, we try to understand the cognitive aspect and meaning of learning by analyzing the various theories of learning. We have also discussed the role of reinforcement, both positive and negative, and its impact on employee behavior. The unit concludes with focusing on the different reinforcement methods and its administration. Concept and definition. The concept of learning is very important for organizational behavior. It has assumed tremendous significance because everything that we do in an organization, some learning is definitely involved. The concept of learning can be used in many contexts. It refers to the process of acquiring the response adequately to a situation which may or may not have previously encountered. A widely accepted simple definition of learning is any relatively permanent change in behavior that occurs as a result of experience. As per this definition, one cannot see the process of learning, but if there is a noticeable change in behavior, then it can be said that learning has taken place. This means we are actually seeing the changed behavior in individuals as a result of learning. Thus, learning as a concept seems to be an abstract and a theoretical one and is not observable directly. It is also said that learning is a relatively permanent change in the frequency of occurrence of a specific individual behavior. In an organizational setting, it is the work set and organizational norms, which will act as objective basis for determining whether an employee's behavior is desirable or undesirable and whether he or she needs to learn and practice productive work behavior. Thus, it is the process by which skills, knowledge, attitudes, and behavior are formed and developed as a result of education, training, socialization, and experience. Learning also occurs as a result of conditioning and restriction. A person is persuaded to adopt guidance or regulation or conformity and compliance based on each situational requirement. Moreover, people learn at different rates, times, and stages during their lifetime. Of course, ultimately it is the individual's own needs and drives and rewards that enhance one's potential and expertise, marketability, along with increased esteem, and respect and status that will act as the motivational drive in inducing the person to learn. There are 6 important components of learning. 1. Learning involves change, although the change may be good or bad from an organization's point of view. 2. Not all changes reflect learning. To constitute learning, change should be relatively permanent. 3. Learning is reflected in behavior. A change in an individual's thought process or attitudes not accompanied by behavior is no learning. 4. The change in behavior should occur as a result of experience, practice, or training. 5. The practice or experience must be reinforced in order for learning to occur. If reinforcement does not accompany the practice or experience, the behavior will eventually disappear. 6. Learning occurs throughout one's life. When employees learn, they acquire both explicit and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is organized and can be communicated from one person to another. Explicit knowledge can be written down and given to others. However, this is only a small portion of total knowledge. Majority of the people have tacit or implied knowledge. Tacit knowledge is the idea that one knows more than what he or she can tell. Tacit knowledge is embedded in our actions and ways of thinking, but is not clearly understood and therefore cannot be communicated explicitly. This knowledge is acquired through observation and direct experience. Most knowledge in organizations is tacit, and one of the challenges in knowledge management is to make implicit knowledge explicit so that it may be stored and shared more easily. Theories of learning. In a work setting, how can learning take place? 4 theories have been used to explain how learning can take place in a work setting. These are classical conditioning theory, operant conditioning theory, social cognitive theory, and learning theory. Of the 4, it is the operant conditioning theory and social cognitive theory which are more helpful in understanding the behavior of others. Classical conditioning theory. It is the process by which individuals learn to link the information value from a neutral stimulus to a stimulus which in the natural course will not cause a response. Such learned behaviors may not be under an individual's conscious control. In the classical conditioning process, an unconditional stimulus will result in a natural response. Then a neutral environment event is associated with the unconditioned stimulus which will bring out the behavior. Subsequently, the conditioned stimulus by itself will bring out the behavior which is called the conditioned response. The name most frequently associated with classical conditioning is the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov, whose experiments with the dogs led to the early formulations of the classical conditioning theory. In Pavlov's famous experiment, the sound of a metronome was associated and paired with conditioned response, the salivation response. Eventually, as per the experiment, the dogs learned to exhibit a salivation response to the sound of metronome alone. The process of classical conditioning can help to understand a variety of behaviors in organizational life. The special lights displayed in front of the emergency room in any hospital will indicate that a patient who immediately needs medical attention and treatment has arrived, whereas the lights displayed across the building during the opening of a new office will indicate the feeling of joy at the opening of a new business establishment. Classical conditioning is a passive one, that is, when something happens, we read it in a particular way. Classical conditioning is not used in work settings mainly because the desired employee behaviors usually do not include responses which can be changed with classical conditioning techniques, that is, it can explain only simple reflexive behaviors and not the complex behaviors that occur in organization. Operant conditioning theory. B.F. Skinner is closely associated with this learning theory. Skinner proposed that behavior is determined from outside, which means that it is a learned involuntary behavior. The term operant conditioning is used in context of voluntary behaviors which are called operants, for they have some influence on the environment. Skinner had opined that if certain pleasant consequences were created to reinforce desirable forms of behavior, there would be an increase in the frequency of such behavior. This means that people will be engaged in desirable behaviors provided they are positively reinforced. Also, that rewards would be more effective if the desired behavior is immediately rewarded. Further, undesirable behavior, if punished, is less likely to be repeated. In fact, most of our behaviors like walking, talking, working can be termed as operant behavior. Social cognitive theory. Skinner's work was extended by Albert Bandura and others by demonstrating that people learn new behavior in a social situation by watching others and then imitating their behavior. According to the social cognitive theory, the social aspect indicates the involvement of individuals to learn as a part of the society, and the cognitive part acknowledge that individuals use thought processes to make decisions. This theory has relevance to organizational behavior because most of the work that goes on in organizations is based on the knowledge and behavior generated by others in that organization. The social cognitive theory has 5 dimensions. Understanding of these 5 dimensions will help one to realize why employees behave differently while facing the same situation. A. Symbolizing. People have the tendency to use symbols, which help them to process visual experiences into models, which will help them to guide their behavior and then react to their environment. B. Forethought. Forethought is used by persons to anticipate, plan, and guide their behaviors and actions. C. Vicarious learning. Almost all forms of learning involve vicariously, by observing the behavior of other people and the consequences of that behavior. D. Self-control. Self-control learning is said to occur when a new behavior is learned even in the absence of any external pressure. Managers and colleagues of employees can use self-efficacy to help employees learn to believe in themselves. This is possible by creating situations in which the employee may respond successfully to the task required. Human resource trainers have been using the social cognitive theory in the form of programs and offer the same to organizations so as to instill team spirit, develop leadership skills, improve an employee's self-efficacy, and bring about managerial effectiveness. Learning theory. Learning theory approach emphasizes the assessment of behavior in objective, measurable terms. This implies that the behavior must be publicly observable and does not give due importance to unobservable, inner, cognitive behavior. In organizations, desirable work behaviors will contribute towards achieving organizational goals. Conversely, undesirable work behaviors will hinder achievement of these goals. For instance, the HR manager may find the behavior of a shop floor worker returning late from a coffee break as undesirable, while the friends of the worker may find the same desirable because he is satisfying his social needs. In the work setup, certain organizational norms are prescribed. The more an employee deviates from the organizational norms, the more undesirable his behavior is. These organizational norms will vary from organization to organization. For instance, in companies like Infosys, all employees are encouraged to open up and communicate with their superiors because professional interaction is considered to be healthy. As against this, among the defense forces, questioning of superiors' instruction and orders will be treated as insubordination and may even invite severe disciplinary actions against the subordinate. To be effective, a manager has to try and identify observable employee behaviors and the environment affecting these behaviors. Then, he has to make efforts at controlling and guiding employee behavior. Thus, the manager's goal will be to provide learning experiences in an environment that will promote employee behaviors desired by the organization. Reinforcement and learning. Reinforcement as a term refers to the psychological process of motivating a person. Though used synonymously, there is a slight difference between motivation and reinforcement. Motivation is a fundamental psychological process and a broader connotation than reinforcement. Motivation can be referred to as an intrinsic process, whereas reinforcement is related to the environment. Simply put, reinforcement will be any action that a person finds rewarding. Few common reinforcement gestures could be a pat on the back, an increase in pay, and a day off or a citation. Reinforcement is something which enhances the strength of the response and prompts repetitions of the behavior that preceded reinforcement. From the above perspective, it may be noted that reinforcement is not merely a reward. This means that the reward aspect is something which is presumed to be desirable from the perspective of the presenter. Although, if the employee being rewarded does not find it sufficiently rewarding, then no reinforcement will take place. Contingency of reinforcement. Contingency of reinforcement refers to the relationship between a person's behavior and the preceding and following environmental events which will influence that behavior. A contingency of reinforcement comprises of an antecedent, a behavior, and a consequence. It should be noted that the presenting or withdrawal of a particular antecedent increases the probability of a particular behavior likely to occur. For instance, managers should ideally prepare a list of to-do items every day. This list as an antecedent helps to organize their jobs or tasks for the day and also calls for their attention on specific behaviors required. A consequence will be the outcome or result of a behavior which can be either positive or negative in terms of accomplishment of the goal. The manager's response to an employee's behavior is contingent on the consequences of the behavior. Reinforcement, punishment, and extinction play a key role in learning process. Reinforcement is used to enhance desirable behavior, while punishment and extinction are employed to minimize undesirable behavior. Reinforcement is always knowledge of feedback about the success of past behavior. Feedback is information that can be used to modify or maintain previous behaviors. However, this information has to be perceived, interpreted, given meaning, and used in decisions about future behaviors. The feedback has to be processed. Reinforcement is the attempt to develop or strengthen desirable behavior. There are two types of reinforcement. 1. Positive reinforcement. It strengthens and enhances behavior by their presentation of positive reinforcers. There are primary reinforcers and secondary reinforcers. Primary reinforcers satisfy basic biological needs and include food, water, and sexual pleasure. However, primary reinforcers do not always reinforce. For instance, food may not be a reinforcer to someone who has just completed a 5-course meal. Most behaviors in organizations are influenced by secondary reinforcers. These include such benefits as money, status, grades, trophies, and praise from others. These become positive reinforcers because of their association with the primary reinforcers and hence often called conditional reinforcers. Positive reinforcement is based on certain principles. The principle of contingent reinforcement states that the reinforcer must be admitted only if the desired behavior has occurred. The principle of immediate reinforcement states that the reinforcer will be most effective if administered immediately after the desired behavior has occurred. The principle of reinforcement size states that the larger the amount of reinforcement delivered after the desired behavior, the more effect the reinforcer will have on the frequency of the desired behavior. The principle of reinforcement deprivation states that the more a person is deprived of the reinforcer, the greater it will have on the future occurrence of the desired behavior. 2. Negative reinforcement. An unpleasant event that precedes a behavior is removed when the desired behavior occurs. Just as there are positive reinforcers, there are negative reinforcers as well. Negative reinforcers are the stimuli that strengthen responses that permit an organism to avoid or escape from their presence. We see negative reinforcement in organizations and in personal life. Supervisors apply negative reinforcement when they stop criticizing employees whose poor performance has improved. Also, negative reinforcement occurs when parents give in to their children's tantrums, especially in public places such as restaurants and shopping malls. Thus, both positive and negative reinforcement are procedures that strengthen or increase behavior. Positive reinforcement strengthens or increases behavior by the presentation of desirable consequences. On the other hand, negative reinforcement strengthens and increases behavior by the threat of and use of undesirable consequences. Negative reinforcement is sometimes confused with punishment because both use unpleasant stimuli to influence behavior. Role and methods of reinforcement. From the discussions so far, we have seen that reinforcement plays a major role, especially in human resources management areas such as training, appraisal, adaptation to change and performance. Moreover, reinforcement is also a powerful tool to increase desirable behavior and reduce undesirable patterns of behavior. It is to be remembered that more than reinforcers, it is the pattern and the time in which reinforcement is administered which has an impact on the resulting behavior. So, let us have a look at the methods of administering reinforcement in organizations. There are 4 methods of administering reinforcement in organizations. A. Fixed ratio method. Under this technique, reinforcement is given after a certain specified number of responses are shown. A fixed ratio which reinforces after every response is called 1:1. To begin with, when learning progresses, we shift to a fixed ratio of 2:1, 4:1, and so on and so forth. This technique can bring about a high rate of response. This is because when the employee realizes that the reinforcement is contingent upon the number of responses, then he is motivated to perform well so as to achieve the specified award. An example is that other things remaining the same, the worker's performance should remain energetic and continue to be steady. But in reality, things may not be the same, and this technique may not lead to the same kind of behavior. B. Variable ratio method. As per this method, a certain number of desired behaviors must occur before reinforcer is delivered. Managers make use of a variable ratio schedule with praise and recognition. State or other lotteries use this method of reinforcement to lure patrons. C. Fixed interval schedule. Under this schedule, the reinforcement is administered after a specific period of time, which is measured from the last reinforced response. For example, in a fixed interval 1-hour schedule, the first desired behavior that occurs after an hour has elapsed is reinforced. But administering rewards as per this schedule produces an uneven pattern of behavior. Prior to the reinforcement, the behavior is frequent and energetic, but immediately after the reinforcement, the behavior becomes less frequent and energetic. This behavior could be because the person knows that the next reward will take time to come. A common instance of this reinforcement is the payment of wages to employees on hourly, weekly, or monthly basis. D. Variable or interval schedule. Either ratio or interval schedules can be administered on a variable basis. That is, the reinforcement is given in an irregular or haphazard manner. This variable interval schedule is slightly different from the variable ratio schedule. Under this schedule, the reward is reinforced after a randomly distributed length of time rather than after a specified number of responses. For instance, if it is said that the employee is being reinforced after a 50-minute variable interval schedule, it implies that on an average, the individual is reinforced after 50 minutes, though the actual reinforcement may be given anywhere from every few seconds to every 2 to 3 hours. Although we have mentioned the 4 most commonly used methods of reinforcement, quite a few organizations use a few combinations of these 4 reinforcements. Punishment. Punishment is the attempt to eliminate or weaken an undesirable behavior. It is in 2 ways. One way to punish a person is to apply a negative consequence called punishers, following an undesirable behavior. The other way to punish a person is to withhold a positive consequence following an undesirable behavior. Even though punishment may stop an undesirable behavior of an employee, the potential negative outcomes may be greater than the cost of undesirable behavior. It is generally accepted that the reinforcing desired behavior is more effective than punishing undesirable behavior. However, C.C. Walters and J.E. Brissac suggested after a review of research that punishment can be effective if it meets the following conditions. 1. The punishment should be quick and short. 2. It should be administered immediately after the undesirable behavior. 3. It should be limited to its intensity. 4. It should specifically relate to behavior and not to character traits. 5. It should be restricted to the context in which the undesirable behavior occurs. 6. It should not send mixed messages about what is accepted behavior. 7. Penalties should take the form of withdrawal of rewards, not physical pain. Managers rely on punishment because it produces faster and immediate change in the employee's behavior. However, it is imperative on the part of the manager to view the long-term detrimental effects of punishment and only try to use a punishment suitable to the situational requirement. Extinction. An alternate to punishing undesirable behavior is extinction. Extinction is the weakening of a behavior by ignoring it or making sure it is not reinforced. The rationale for using extinction is that a behavior not followed by any reinforcer is weakened. In other words, if rewards are withdrawn for behavior that were previously reinforced, the behaviors probably will become less frequent and eventually die out. Extinction needs time and patience to be effective. Extinction as a type of reinforcement is applied to reduce undesirable behavior, especially when such behaviors were previously reported. From organizational point of view, if an employee is consistently late to work and thus consistently fails to get praise from his superior and is not recommended for a pay raise, then we would expect this reinforcement to lead to extinction of the habit of the behavior of coming late to work. Organizational learning. The importance of learning was first put forward by a Chinese philosopher, Confucius, in the words, quote, "Without learning, the wise become foolish. By learning, the foolish become wise." Unquote. Learning refers to relatively permanent changes in behavior occurring as a result of experience. The concept of learning organization is not new. Many authors have talked about it from others and their own past experiences. Probably, Garat was the first to publish a book on the subject in 1987, but the concept was popularized by Senge when his famous book, The Fifth Discipline, was released in 1990. Senge's book triggered a great deal of interest in the subject of learning organizations. A large number of publications appeared on the subject during the current decade. Concept and definition. In 1970s, Argyris proposed the concept of a different qualitative learning contrasted with traditional learning, or the single loop learning, double loop learning, emphasized testing of the underlying assumptions and achieving transformational change. Senge contrasted adaptive learning with generative learning. David Garvin defines a learning organization as an organization skilled at creating, acquiring, and transferring knowledge and at modifying its behavior to reflect new knowledge and insights. The mentioned definition is of interest for a number of reasons. First, it focuses on behavior. Second, it implies that organizations have skills, an essential one being that of learning. Third, it focuses on transferring knowledge. Finally, the use of concepts such as skills, knowledge, and modifying behavior indicate a language suggestive of HRD practice. Peter M. Senge, in his groundbreaking book, The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization, described a learning organization as, quote, "a place where people continually expand their capacity to create the results they truly desire, where new and expansive patterns of thinking are nurtured, where collective aspiration is set free, and where people are continually learning to learn together." Unquote. Ross, Smith, Roberts, and Kleiner advocate this definition, quote, "Learning in an organization means the continuous testing of experience and the transformation of that experience into knowledge, accessible to the whole organization and relevant to its core purpose." Unquote. Organizational learning means the process of improving actions through better knowledge acquisition, clearer understanding, and improved performance. It is a method of detecting and correcting errors. The main issues in organizational learning are 3 M's. 1. Meaning. Well-grounded definition of learning organizations. It must be actionable and easy to apply. 2. Management. Clearer guidelines for practice filled with operational advice rather than high aspirations. 3. Measurement. Better tools for assessing an organization's rate and level of learning to ensure that gains in fact have been made. Further, a learning organization is one which facilitates the learning of all its members and which continuously transforms itself.
We were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program. Course code Mmpc 011, titled Social Processes and Behavioral Issues. Course coordinator Professor Srilata. Voiceover by Renuka. Edited by Ashok Sharma. Program assisted by Tarannum Jaha. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.